Hello, my name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association. Welcome to this IPA Talk. Very fortunate for the very first IPA Talk of FY23. I'm joined with Raul Gaston, who is the 2022-2023 IPA President and the first Latino President of the association as well. So a little bit of groundbreaking work happening here, Raul. But thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, and making the drive down on a rainy day here in early July. It's all good.
Not a bad drive until about 20 miles out of Springfield, then it started pouring.
Yeah,
but it's not bad at all.
You got here. We'd like for you to take some of that rain back north with you up your direction.
We could use some. We could use some.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it, Raul. When I have these opportunities at the beginning of a school year to talk with the presidents as they're starting their term, always want to spend a little bit of time just getting to know you and your story as well. It brings you to this position, not just president of the association, but your role as a middle school principal in DuPage County, all of that kind of stuff. So just tell us a little bit about who you are, and and if you could refrain from some of the more not so positive things like your baseball allegiances, stuff. We can get that on the table too. But anyway, let's get to it.
The Cubs took out the Brewers yesterday. Does a little favor to the Cardinals.
Yeah, we'll take it, especially after getting swept by the Braves. So what are you going to do? Anyway. So just share with us your background, Raul. What's your story?
I'll just share a little bit and just feel free to plug in any questions anywhere along the line. But I was born in Puerto Rico. I'm originally born in Rio Piedras, small town, but grew up mostly in Carolina and Bayamon, which are on both sides of the capital. From there, my family moved to New York for a little bit. Didn't like it. Went back to Puerto Rico. And after a little bit of time there, going to a couple of schools, my family then decided to move to Chicago area, and that's where we kind of stuck. We dropped anchor in Chicago and stayed there for quite some time. Went to high school in Chicago.
Where, by the way?
Clemente High School in Humboldt Park.
Okay.
So the Humboldt Park area, mostly Puerto Rican kind of neighborhood. Changed a lot since then, but that's where we kind of anchored down and stayed for quite some time. So from there, I met my wife. We got married, decided to continue our education, graduated high school in '86. But didn't graduate college till '96. We took the 10-year, extended tour with a few life choices and a few jobs and a few other interests, and then ended up going back to school. We wanted to become educators. We wanted to be teachers and work with students. Always loved working with kids, and that's something that we wanted to do, and we were able to do that. We accomplished that. We ended up going to Eastern, which is not right here, Central Illinois, right down the corner, right? Charleston. Yeah. So we ended up at Eastern. We both got our bachelors, and then from there, our first job was in Urbana. Ended up in Urbana. I taught middle school Spanish for 9 years at Urbana Middle School. My wife taught elementary. And at that point, we wanted to have a family. We were itching to just have a family of our own. We had kind of delayed that for some time. And we couldn't have children biologically. So we decided to foster. And after a few foster children came through our home, we decided to adopt. And our two girls that we fostered became available for adoption. They're sisters. And they're now 18 and 20.
Yes, and you got a bunch of life stuff happening with them too, right? Marriages and going to college and all kinds of things, right?
Yeah, my oldest is 20 years old, and she's getting married in about a week and a half now, later in July, so she's getting married pretty soon. Yeah. Great guy, Brad, love him, fantastic young man. They're both met in high school and stayed together, and that's her fiance, and now they're getting ready to take the next step. My youngest is 18. She just finished high school, and she's going off to NIU to do psychology. She wants to do psychology with a focus on sex trafficking and helping women. Yeah. And so that's something that she's very interested in. So we're going to get her into an NIU program and see how she does there. So we're very excited for her.
Those are noble pursuits for sure with that. So let me pause here. I want to backtrack, Raul. I'm always interested of the types of jobs that people have had because you kind of are I don't know if you technically would qualify as a second career type educator, but kind of. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, what kind of work did you do in those 10 years?
Well, I'll go through a list of them. I was a janitor.
Yeah.
School bus driver.
Oh, my.
security officer. That's where I spent most of my time studying while I was going to school because I would work. It was interesting, a point in our life, because I would work the night shift, take my books with me, study at night, go to school in the morning. My wife would meet me in downtown Chicago. We went to Harold Washington College. Went to school during the day in the morning, went home, went to sleep so that she can use the books and she could study. So that's how we saved money. We basically took the same classes because we were both education majors. We took the same classes, so that's how we saved money. We bought the same books and we just shared them. So she used them in the afternoon. I used them in the middle of the night while I was studying as a security officer sitting at a desk in downtown Chicago. I was also a bouncer. Not sure I want to add that to my resume, but
well, you got the size for it. Not me, but
so
absolutely.
A number of stints of different choices of jobs wherever the jobs took me. But that's when I decided that I really wanted to go back to school.
You know, I'm sure there are some skills from all of those positions that are helping you today, wouldn't you think? Some things that you learned along the way.
Yeah, bouncer came in handy a couple of times.
That's right. Yeah, no kidding. Unruly fans or whatever, ball games, that kind of stuff.
You never know.
No doubt. Well, but also trying to de-escalate situations,
Exactly.
Which would also be important because we don't want people to get hurt or anything like that. All right, so Eastern, got your bachelor's from there, teaching in Urbana, but then what? So, you know, because you're sitting in a school leadership position, obviously president of the association.
Yeah, I was in Urbana and decided, I had several students come through as student teachers or student observers, and had some credits available to be able to go to U of I, and went to U of I and got my first master's in global studies. Then when at some point, once we adopted our daughters, we wanted to be closer to family, and my father-in-law was not in the greatest of health, and my wife wanted to be closer to family, so we decided to move up to DuPage area, which is where they live. They live in Will, and so we decided to move up into the area, and I was able to get a job at York High School as a Spanish teacher. That became department chair. That's when I went back to school again and got my second master's in administration, and did the world language thing, and then all of a sudden an assistant principal position opened at Jefferson, where I am now, is at Jefferson Middle School in Villa Park, District 45. That became available, and I'm like, well, let's see what that's all about. I want to explore that, and my idea there was to be an assistant principal for about 4 years or so, and maybe move into a principalship. But the principal at that time, Dr. Katzen, decided to leave after 2 years and become a superintendent, and I'm like, well, I always believe you either put up or shut up. You either put your name in the hat.
Take the opportunities when they come.
Exactly. So I took my shot, like in Hamilton, take your shot, right? So I took my shot, and they gave me an opportunity, and I've been there since. Finished my 10th year as principal, 2 years as assistant principal before that, and 10 years as principal at Jefferson. So, and that's where I am now. That's my journey there.
So tell us about your school, kids, community.
Oh, it's fantastic. We have over approximately any given year 420 to 440 students, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Very diverse community. We have multiple cultures and multiple languages in our building. We feed into Willowbrook High School. We have 2 middle schools, Jefferson and Jackson, in our district. Our district is moving forward very, very quickly. We just, due to the great support from our community with a referendum, we were able to build a new early childhood center that's opening this fall. That opens up spaces in our elementaries to now offer full-day kindergarten for the first time as well. And we're just reaping the benefits of all that as those kids come down the line. Amazing curriculum work, amazing refresh of our schools, new furniture, which sometimes you don't think about those things, but
they do matter.
They matter
facilities
tremendously,
and supplies,
tremendously.
All of that stuff.
Great technology, great furniture coming in. We're really moving forward in our district to support our students in their learning. So real excited to be there. It's a very good and exciting time to be in District 45.
Well, my guess is people in the area are going to be taking notice. You're probably going to experience some growth as a result of some of that too, especially for what you're doing for those younger kids. That's outstanding. So Raul, you know, you've been there 10 years in this current position, right? My track and my timeline right there. So 10 years in your current position. You know, one of the things that we've talked a lot about currently in the association is this whole notion of leadership churn. You know, and having a real problem with that in the profession, right? That the statistic that I like to share often is if we were to hire 4 principals today into brand new positions, whether they're rookie principals or veteran principals, in 5 years, only one of those people will still be in that same seat. That's what the national stats are showing. And some of it's for positive reasons. You know, they found a new opportunity that's better for them. You know, maybe they're moving into a central office position. Maybe they're retiring. I mean, there could be some of that. But we know, too, that there are issues with burnout. And, of course, you know, well, I don't know that we want to get too much into pandemic stuff because we've had IPA Talks where you've been a part of. We've talked about some of those issues, of course. But also there are times when the school districts are asking people to move on and find their joy someplace else, if you know what I mean. So, you know, when you look at you know, your time there and being in this position 10 years, what I attribute, you've had a lot of successes in your district as a school leader. I've been to your school tour. It's a great place, great culture, which, by the way, when you tour schools, which I've had the opportunity to do several, there are a couple of truths that I always come away with. One of them, though, is that the climate and culture, the personality of the building always reflects that of the building principal every time. But when you think about your 10 years there, what do you think's been, what's allowed for you to be able to be in that position for 10 years, have the success that you've had, which, you know, having a 10-year tenure in a position, I think, in and of itself it speaks to success. But beyond that, like, allows for you to be sustained, you as a leader dealing with the emotional ebbs and flows that obviously come in a middle school of all things, man, and you're definitely storing up blessings in heaven from that, because I have a couple of middle schoolers at home, and those kids are crazy. I was a high school guy for a reason. So anyway, long-winded way of getting to this question of, you know, what's allowed for you to have leadership success, what's allowed for you to stay sustained in the position that you're in.
I think there are 3 key factors, at least for me, and I can't speak for every administrator out there, but for me there were 3 key factors that play into taking on this role. When I was looking for an assistant principal position, because I was ready to move on, I was transitioning from teacher to department chair. That's like a pseudo teaching and administrator at the same time. From there, I was looking into that assistant principal position. I wanted to be in a place where I felt that I could be of impact, that I could be of benefit. And so I was very selective about which schools I would apply to. Not every school is a place for you to be at. I've always believed that.
Yeah, fit's important, right?
Fit
Absolutely.
is huge. And so I was looking for a community that represented somewhat of a cultural diverse, a piece of Hispanic, you know, a larger population, poverty, that's something, dual language, bilingual.
Sure.
There were some key things that I was looking for in a school that I knew something about and that I had experience. I was an EL student. When I came from Puerto Rico, I knew how to say a number 1 supersize with a Coke. That was it.
Wow.
But I survived, right? But that was it. That's all I got. You know, so I could go to McDonald's and order something, but that was about the extent. But if it wasn't for the EL teacher that I have, Mr. Miranda, in 8th grade at Lafayette, I don't know that I would have been able to be as successful than going into high school. So that EL background for me was important, that we can support students in their English learning. So I was looking for those kinds of buildings, those kinds of districts. And so I wasn't applying for 20 different schools out there. I literally applied for the 3 and 1 called because that's what I was looking for. So fit is important. You know, what impact do you want to have in your building, in your district, in that community that you can bring to that community? So that was number 1 for me. Number 2 was, once I got there, I knew that I was going to make some changes. Every administrator comes in thinking that you're going to make all these changes, but you don't make them overnight. And if you do, that's a real quick show to the door to exit.
Oh yeah, right, absolutely.
So it's finding what are the things that you can change that will improve over time and create a new culture. And that takes time. You have to be patient. So if you're planning on moving up the ladder in 3 or 4 years and moving on to another building, that's going to be very difficult for you to create that sustainable change if you're just going to be there a short period of time. I can tell you right now that Jefferson, where it is now, 10 years ago, was a very different building.
Absolutely.
But it's not just because of the principal. It's because I have the right people. I have great personnel. I have people that follow some of the things, question things when I'm kind of off on my rocker, and they're like, "What are you thinking?" And then I explain, like, "Well, that's a good idea, but what about if we did this?" Okay, let's talk about that. And now we start bringing in those angles, and now we got buy-in because everybody's kind of pitching in. So it's really understanding your culture and how to move that culture in a direction that you want to move to, but also your district is moving to, and mending those together. So that was number 2. And number 3 is I'm always building up. I'm always trying to build up the next group of teachers. This is going to sound terrible at first, but actually it's a good thing. I've had 4 assistant principals in those 10 years, which sounds terrible because they're like, "Oh, you can't keep an assistant principal. You're running them away." But 3 of them became principals, somewhere else.
It's a great legacy.
It's moving them through that time of becoming that assistant principal position, going towards that principal position. But I've also had a number of teachers. This last year, I lost 2 teachers because they became assistant principals in other districts. So I'm always supporting them, always pushing them, nurturing them. Here's some more information. I know you're interested in leadership. Here's an opportunity for you. I'd like you to become my next team leader. I'd like you to take on that role because that's something you can put on your resume. Those kind of things to support that next level. So out of my building, I think we've had like 4 or 5 administrators come out of a small building that only has 400 teachers and about 50 staff members. To produce 4 or 5 administrators is pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
which the profession desperately needs, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right
and
now.
I think that's something that my staff sees. They're like, "We know that we're going to get a new assistant principal, but as you train them to become principal, we need to do this, this, and this." Like they know that that's what I do. That's what I'm going to push them to. If they choose to go that route. If they don't want to go that route, that's a different story, obviously. But if that's something they want to do, I'm there to support them.
So it reminds me of the saying, and I'm probably going to kind of butcher it here a little bit, where they talk about people being fearful, leaders being fearful of training up and elevating their people because they're concerned that they may leave. But if you don't, and we don't elevate them, teach them, train them up, grow them, then they stay. Like if we're not doing what we need to pour into them and then they stay, then nothing's getting any better, right? So I obviously greatly appreciate that philosophy.
Well, it's
and
like
what you're
like one of the assistant principals that I worked with. I knew he was going to become a principal. There's no question about it. It was a matter of time. But he was ready to go and move on. And I told him, "Look, I know that I got you for a limited time. But I'd rather have 2 years of awesome than 5 years of mediocre. I'd rather have 2 years of awesome." And that's the way I believe, because I know I'm going to get 2 fantastic years, or 3 or 4, whatever that may be. But I'd rather have 2 years of awesome than 5 or more years of average. And that's what we've been able to accomplish.
So when did you, of these 10 years, when did you feel like you finally got the wind at your back? You know, I can tell you, for me at IPA, I'm now at the beginning of year 17. And for me, I felt like it wasn't until about year 7 or so here that I felt like I had a handle on what we did. Obviously, had an opportunity through just natural attrition to hire people. And the thing about hiring new folks is they don't know any different, and so you immediately get them moving in the direction of the climate and the culture of what you're trying to get established. So a little bit of that helps. Fortunately, here at IPA, we've always had really good people here working for us, so that was never a heavy lift. But with all that being said, it just still takes time to get things going in the direction that you feel good about. And so I'm just curious for you, like, when did you feel like that happened, and then how did you know? And maybe that's a hard question maybe to answer, but I'm just curious about that.
I think there were some areas, I'd say somewhere around year 4, 5. In other areas, maybe around 7 or 8. It just depends on what you were working on. I think the way I knew is when teachers started telling me certain things. For example, there was always this concern about the schedule. What's the schedule going to look like? Every year, people want to know what the schedule is for next year, and they want to know as soon as possible. Tell them in December what they're going to be doing in August.
I know.
I'm not that good. I don't know all the things yet, but they always want to know the schedule. But it came to a point where people were like, we know you'll have the schedule by spring break. You know, like that wasn't even an issue anymore. Like the question or the concerns diminish. I want to say they ever get eliminated, but at least they diminish. And so you can see that people saw the pattern, that there's something that Raul does and he's going to take care of it, and it's done. When the pandemic hit and we had all these schedules that we had to create and hybrids and all kinds of things going on, in my building, that was not a concern. It was really bizarre because I expected, you know, there were a lot of safety concerns and a lot of things, you know, going on, and rules changed by the week. And so there were a lot of concerns in many different areas. But when it came to the schedule and how we're going to run the building, Raul's got it. He'll figure something out. Yeah. And so that's when I knew that I got this, you know, because they had that level of trust in me that I can accomplish those things, and those are more management kind of things as opposed to leadership type of things.
But those are two sides of the same coin, right? If the management's not getting done well,
exactly.
And what you described there, I think the comfort that people had in you, Raul, at that point in time, especially, is that they experienced consistency from you, right? That they just knew your routines and processes, and you weren't faltering on that. And then if there was going to be a change, you're communicating that, and so everybody's aware of what's going on, and so that obviously, you know, makes a big difference. So you've brought up the pandemic a little bit, and I'm going to use this as a transition point into the theme for this year, which might be one of the, as crazy as this might sound, might be one of the more difficult responsibilities of the president, is just to think about, you know, what's our focus and our theme going to be as an association. Of course, it really provides focus for our annual conference that we have in October, which we'll talk a little bit about. But you know, this year, I love this theme this year, and I think the timing is perfect for it as we think about, hopefully, finally, while we still have to be, you know, vigilant, diligent, however you want to describe it, as we're navigating a pandemic that hopefully is now more endemic, and what that means for schools. But this year's theme that you've chosen is Leaders of Hope, which I love. And there are, you know, there might even be some connection that being a Star Wars guy myself, I know that you are as well. I love that because of thinking about that as a kid, and the whole the notion of hope in that movie series. I don't know why I brought that in, but it just kind of hit me there as something I know that you enjoy, and others might as well as they get to know you. But you know, why this theme right now from your perspective? You know, why is it important that we be leaders of hope, and how can it be, you know, a good mantra for us as we head into this next school year?
Well, looking at that topic of hope, that's one thing that kind of evolved over time. But when we started this process, transitioning back into school, getting back into our more typical kind of schedule, getting kids in person as opposed to, you know, through cameras and Zooms and all kinds of things. So as I saw that transition, I started becoming more hopeful. We finally got kids in the building. We finally got school again, you know, and it felt like things were kind of waking up again. It's been so long. It had been so long that we didn't have too many people in the building. Our teachers were able to teach remotely from their home for a while. So the building was practically empty. We did a lot of painting and a lot of floor cleaning, and a lot of stuff got done. Our janitors kept busy and did a lot of things that they hadn't had time for because there's no one in the building.
Sure.
And so once we started seeing things come back, and then all of a sudden we could play basketball and we could play a sport, and we could actually start doing some of these things. That started kind of getting me up and getting me excited. And so those are the things that I started looking at, like, this is where